Would you look at that pathetic sight, K.R. Thax whispered to his companion, his primary sensory tentacles curling in disgust. A TR Kali child with non-functioning locomotor appendages. At the Grand Galactic Tournament, no less. Back on my world, such defective offspring would have been. Shut your mouth. The voice that cut through K.R. Thax's venomous musings was quiet yet carried the weight of compressed neutronium. The VR Kicks merchant turned all four of his eye stalks toward its source and immediately wished he hadn't. Standing there, looming there was a human. And not just any human, but one whose scarred face and ceremonial dress marked him as a veteran of the Terra Drachnid War. Oh, stellar excrement. I meant no offense, honored human K.R. Thax stammered, his bravado evaporating faster than liquid hydrogen in a plasma stream. I was merely observing. You were merely being the sort of bottom-feeding waste of carbon that gives sentient life a bad name, the human replied with a smile that contained absolutely zero warmth. Now, if you'll excuse me, I see someone far more worthy of attention. Commander Marcus Steelheart Rodriguez, retired, turned away from the now trembling merchant, his cybernetic left leg whirring almost imperceptibly as he approached the young TR Kali. The boy in Marcus was fairly certain it was a male, given the distinctive crest pattern sat in what humans would recognize as a wheelchair, though this one hovered on anti-grav units rather than rolling on wheels. The child's upper body was well developed, with the characteristic iridescent scales of his species gleaming under the arena's lights, but his lower half was noticeably atrophied, a birth defect, most likely, or perhaps an injury. What caught Marcus's attention, though, wasn't the disability, it was the datapad the boy clutched, covered in complex mathematical formulas that Marcus recognized as advanced trajectory calculations. Those are some impressive equations you're working on there, young Sir Marcus said, carefully modulating his voice to be gentle rather than intimidating. The universal translator rendered his words into the musical trills of TR Kali standard. The boy's head snapped up, his compound eyes widening in surprise. A moment later, they narrowed in suspicion. Are you mocking me, human? Marcus shook his head, then remembered that the gesture might not translate well across species. Not at all. In fact, he reached down and rapped his knuckles against his cybernetic leg, producing a distinctive metallic clang. I know a thing or two about working around physical limitations. Name's Marcus. What's yours? The young TR Kali's crest fluttered in what Marcus recognized as cautious interest. I am ZK Troll, though most call me ZK. His upper appendages twitched toward the datapad. And these aren't just equations. They're targeting solutions, Marcus finished, grinning. For the neural-linked combat simulator competition, right? The one that starts and he made a show of checking his chronometer, about 20 minutes. ZK's crest now fluttered in full-on agitation. Yes, but it doesn't matter. They won't let me compete. Registration closed yesterday, and the official said that without proper mobility certification, I couldn't. Marcus's laugh, rich and genuine, cut him off. Oh kid, you've got so much to learn about humans and bureaucracy. See this? He tapped the collection of medals and ribbons on his dress uniform. Being a decorated war hero has its perks. One of them is that sometimes when we see something monumentally stupid happening, we get to pull rank and make it unhappen. ZK's compound eyes seemed to shine. You mean? I mean, grab those calculations, kid. You and I are going to go have a fascinating chat with the tournament officials about the difference between physical mobility and neural response times. And then, Marcus's grin turned positively predatory. Then we're going to show this whole stuck-up gathering of galaxy's finest what a defective TR Kali and a broken-down old human can really do. The boy's crest now rippled with colors that Marcus's translator rendered as combinations of excitement, disbelief, and growing hope. K.R. Thax, still watching from a safe distance, felt his dermal layers grow clammy as he observed the human veteran and the disabled child heading toward the registration area. He'd seen that look in a human's eyes before, right before they did something that defied all logical probability. This, he muttered to his companion, is going to be either spectacular or catastrophic. Possibly both. He had no idea just how right he was. Absolutely not. Tournament director V.A. Lett's crystalline appendages clinked together in agitation. The registration deadline passed exactly 26.4 standard cycles ago. Furthermore, all participants must meet our stringent physical requirements for what? Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying that dangerous sweetness that combat veterans reserve for moments right before things get interesting. For sitting in a neural interface pod? Last I checked, Director, the whole point of a neural link combat simulator was that it's, neural. He tapped his temple for emphasis. Unless your pods have suddenly started requiring participants to run obstacle courses while they're mentally piloting their sim units. The director's crystalline form flickered through various shades of indignant purple. That's not the point. The regulations clearly state. The regulations. Marcus cut in again, pulling out a data crystal and holding it up to the light, which I've just spent the last 15 minutes reviewing, state that participants must demonstrate adequate neural response times and cognitive processing capabilities. Fascinating reading. Really. Especially the part where it doesn't say a single word about locomotor function. ZK, positioned beside Marcus in his hover chair, watched the exchange with a mixture of awe and anxiety. His crest rippled with suppressed emotion as the human veteran systematically dismantled each of the director's objections. But he's just a child, VA Leth protested weakly. A child, Marcus agreed pleasantly, who was solving quantum targeting equations that would give most military academies graduate students headaches. Here, would you like to see? He reached for ZK's Tay's datapad. The young TR Kali, catching on, eagerly handed over his calculations. Marcus held them up to the director's sensory cluster. Now, I'm no expert in TR Kali physiology, but I'm pretty sure their neural development isn't that different from humans. You know what we humans discovered during the Pterodrachnid War? Age doesn't matter nearly as much as raw talent when it comes to neural interfacing. Some of our best sim pilots were teenagers. That's completely irrelevant. VA Leth's crystals were now cycling through colors so rapidly they resembled a malfunctioning disco ball. The liability alone will be completely covered, came a new voice, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as expensive sounding. All heads and equivalent sensory clusters turned to see a tall, elegantly dressed NX Thari approaching. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed with authority, and even VA Leth seemed to shrink slightly in her presence. Ambassador Pithra, the director's voice took on a distinctly groveling tone. I didn't expect. Clearly, the ambassador cut him off with practiced diplomatic precision. Commander Rodriguez, a pleasure to see you again. That little intervention of yours during the Centauri crisis saved quite a few of my people. Marcus gave a modest shrug. Just doing my job, Ambassador. Though I could use a small favor now. Pithra's biolights twinkled in what Marcus recognized as amusement. Let me guess, you need someone to take official responsibility for young ZK Charles' participation. Consider it done. My office will handle all the necessary paperwork. VA Leth's crystalline form seemed to deflate. But the registration deadline is a bureaucratic construct that pales in comparison to the potential diplomatic incident of denying a decorated war hero's reasonable request. Pithra finished smoothly, particularly when that request aligns perfectly with the tournament's stated mission of promoting cross-species understanding and celebrating diverse talents. Her bio-lights pulsed meaningfully. Unless you'd prefer I discuss this matter with the tournament board. The director practically vibrated with frustration before finally conceding. Fine. But don't expect any special treatment during the competition itself. Wouldn't dream of it, Marcus replied cheerfully. As VA Leth stormed off in a symphony of clinking crystals, he turned to ZK. Well, kid, looks like you're in. Think you can handle the pressure? ZK's crest rippled with determination. The real question, Commander, is whether they can handle what I'm about to show them. He patted the datapad containing his equations. I've been running simulations in my head since I was old enough to think. They have no idea what's coming. Bold words, Pithra observed, her bio-lights pulsing with curiosity. The Neural-Linked Combat Simulator Championship has been dominated by the Arcanian Collective for the past 12 cycles. Their neural synchronization is supposedly unmatched. Maybe Marcus grinned, but they've never faced a TR Kali math prodigy with something to prove. Speaking of which, he checked the time. We've got exactly 43 minutes until the preliminary rounds begin. Just enough time to get you fitted for a pod and run some basic calibrations. As they headed toward the preparation area, Pithra fell into step beside them. I trust you know what you're doing, Commander? Marcus watched as ZK's crest colors shifted through patterns of excitement and determination. Ambassador, there's something you learn pretty quick in combat. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest or the strongest. He tapped his temple again. Sometimes it's the one everyone underestimated. Behind them, a small crowd had begun to gather, whispering and pointing. Word was spreading rapidly through the tournament complex a disabled TR Kali child was going to compete in the Neural-Linked Combat Simulator Championships. Some of the comments were skeptical, others outright derisive. But a few watched with knowing eyes, particularly those who had ever faced humans in combat. They recognized the look Marcus wore. It was the same expression humans got right before they did something that changed the galaxy's understanding of what was possible. In the preparation room, as technicians scrambled to adjust a neural interface pod for TR Kali physiology, ZK suddenly reached out and caught Marcus's sleeve. "Commander, why? Why are you doing this for me?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his cybernetic leg whirring softly as he shifted his weight. Finally, he smiled, not his dangerous smile or his diplomatic one, but something genuine and a little sad. "Because about 30 years ago, I was a kid too. Had my legs blown off in one of the first battles of the Terra-Drachnid War. And you know what? Some people looked at me the same way they look at you, like I was broken, useless. But then someone saw past that, saw what I could still do. What I could become." He patted his ceremonial uniform. "Sometimes, kid, all it takes is one person willing to give you a chance." ZK's crest rippled with colors the translator couldn't quite capture, something between gratitude and fierce determination. Now Marcus continued, his grin turning slightly wicked. "Let's go show these stuffed-up neural specialists what happens when they underestimate the wrong competitor, shall we?" As the technicians finished their preparations and the announcement system began calling for preliminary round participants, the air in the preparation room crackled with anticipation. Something unprecedented was about to unfold, and everyone could feel it. The game was about to change. They just didn't know how much. The Neural-Linked Combat Simulator Arena was a marvel of engineering, a massive spherical chamber ringed with thousands of holographic displays for spectators. At its center, 16 neural interface pods hung suspended in a geometric pattern, each one a sleek capsule designed to interface with various species' nervous systems. "Sweet mother of Einstein," ZK whispered as the technicians helped him into his specially adjusted pod. "I've never seen anything this terrifying? Overwhelming? Like something out of your worst nightmares combined with your wildest dreams," Marcus supplied helpfully, supervising the neural calibration. "Yes, all of that. Plus some emotions my translator probably can't convey." The human veteran chuckled. "Kid, I've seen hardened soldiers throw up before their first sim pod match. You're doing fine." He checked the neural readings on his datapad. "In fact, you're doing better than fine. Your baseline neural synchronization is off the charts." A snort of derision came from the pod next to them. "Off the bottom of the charts, perhaps." Marcus turned to see a tall, silvery-skinned Arcanian adjusting his neural interface. The alien's multifaceted eyes gleamed with contempt. "Garval, 6-time Neural-Linked champion," the Arcanian announced, though nobody had asked. "I suppose I should thank you for making this competition more entertaining. It's been so boring, winning every year." ZK's crest started to droop, but Marcus stepped between them. "Garval? The Goral? Oh man, this is perfect." His enthusiasm seemed to catch the champion off guard. "Kid, you're not going to believe this, but I've studied all of Garval's matches. Want to know his tell?" The Arcanian's silver skin paled slightly. "My, what? His tell? You know that thing he does right before he executes his famous spiral surge maneuver? The one where he always, and I mean always, shifts his neural pattern to his left sensory cluster first, creates a microsecond delay in his starboard reactions." "I do not." Garval started, but Marcus wasn't finished. "Oh, and the way he compensates for the Mark 7 sim unit's gravitational drift by overcorrecting at exactly 47 degrees. Classic mistake. Creates a blind spot big enough to fly a Drachnid warship through." Marcus winked at ZK. "But hey, I'm sure a mathematical genius like you already figured all that out from watching the public broadcasts, right?" ZK's crest was now rippling with barely suppressed laughter as he watched Garval's face move through various shades of outrage and concern. The Arcanian champion finally stormed off, muttering something about preposterous humans and impossible calculations. Did you really spot all those weaknesses in his technique?" ZK asked once Garval was out of earshot. Marcus's grin turned positively devilish. "Kid, I have no idea if anything I just said was true. But he doesn't know that, and right now his neural patterns are probably so scrambled with worry that he couldn't execute a proper spiral surge if his life depended on it. That's psychological warfare." "Damn straight it is. Rule number 1 of any competition: the battle starts long before the first shot is fired. Marcus checked the chronometer. Speaking of which, 2 minutes until the preliminary round. How are you feeling? Zk took a deep breath, his crest settling into determined patterns. Like I'm about to throw up, pass out, and solve a quantum mechanics equation all at the same time. Perfect. That's exactly how you should feel. Now remember what we discussed the first round is all about. Survival. Zk finished. Don't try to win, don't try to show off. Just stay alive and learn the physics engine's quirks. Good man. And what's rule number 2? There's no such thing as a fair fight. Use every advantage you've got. Marcus beamed like a proud parent. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate classification, the announcement system boomed. Welcome to the 127th Annual Neural Linked Combat Simulator Championships. The crowd's roar was deafening. In the VIP section, Ambassador Pithra's bio-lights pulsed with anticipation as she watched Marcus make his final adjustments to Zk's neural interface. Preliminary round beginning in 10, 9. The neural pod's canopy began to lower over Zk. Just before it sealed, Marcus caught his eye. Hey, kid? Yes, Commander. Give him hell. The pod sealed with a soft hiss, and Zk's world dissolved into a stream of neural data. When his consciousness reformed, he was at the helm of a Mark 7 simulator unit, a sleek, single-pilot craft designed purely for neural-linked combat. Around him, 15 other competitors materialized in identical units. 3, 2, 1. Engage. The arena exploded into chaos. Simulation units screamed past each other, energy weapons lighting up the artificial space like a stellar nursery gone supernova. 2 competitors immediately collided, their poor neural synchronization causing them to misjudge distances. Their units dissolved into digital fragments. Zk took a deep breath and reached for those equations he'd been working on, the ones that had caught Marcus's attention. Trajectory calculations bloomed in his mind like mathematical flowers, each variable a petal unfolding into perfect clarity. A shot grazed his port shield. Without thinking, he executed a maneuver that should have been impossible given the Mark 7 stated specifications, but Zk wasn't operating on stated specifications. He was operating on pure mathematics, on calculations so precise they bordered on precognition. Impossible, he heard Gurval's voice over the comm channel as Zk's unit slipped through a gap between 2 converging attack patterns that shouldn't have existed. The neural lag alone should. Should what? Zk asked innocently as he carved another impossible path through the chaos. Should prevent me from calculating 4-dimensional space-time coordinates in my head. Should stop me from treating your attack patterns like the simple geometric progressions they are. In the observation booth, Marcus watched the neural feedback displays with growing satisfaction. Zk's patterns were unlike anything he'd ever seen, not the brute force synchronization of the Arcanians, but something more elegant, more precise. He's not just piloting the unit, Pithra observed, her bio-lights pulsing with wonder. He's solving it. Like an equation. Better than that, Marcus replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. He's rewriting the whole damn textbook. As the preliminary round entered its final minutes, the spectators had fallen into a hushed silence. They were witnessing something unprecedented, a disabled TR Kali child not just surviving against champions and veterans, but making it look like an elegant dance, a mathematical ballet of light and motion. When the round ended, Zk's unit was not only intact but completely untouched. He hadn't fired a single shot. He hadn't needed to. As the neural pod's canopy opened, Zk found himself facing a crowd of stunned faces and one very smug human veteran. Not bad for a warm-up, Marcus said casually, ready to show them what you can do when you're actually trying. Zk's crest rippled with colors that the translator rendered as anticipation, joy, and something that could only be described as mathematical bloodlust. Commander, he replied, I haven't even started calculating yet. In the competitor's area, Gurval was frantically reviewing his neural recordings, trying to understand exactly what he had just witnessed. Around him, other competitors whispered and pointed at the young TR Kali who had just changed everything they thought they knew about neural-linked combat. The revolution hadn't just begun. It had been calculated, computed, and executed with mathematical precision. And this was only round 1. They've modified the neural interface protocols, Zk announced as technicians swarmed around his pod between rounds. His crest flickered with patterns that Marcus's translator rendered as amused irritation. Oh, Marcus raised an eyebrow, examining the system readouts. Let me guess, someone complained that your neural synchronization patterns were unconventional. Gorval and 3 other Arcanian competitors filed a formal protest. ZK's upper appendages moved in what he'd picked up as a human-style shrug. They claim my mathematical approach provides an unfair computational advantage. Marcus threw his head back and laughed so hard that several nearby aliens flinched. An unfair advantage? In a neural-linked combat simulation? That's rich, coming from a species that literally evolved with distributed neural clusters. The protest has been denied, Ambassador Pithra announced, gliding up to them with her biolights pulsing in what Marcus had learned to recognize as suppressed mirth. However, the tournament committee did agree to implement standardized neural protocols for all remaining rounds, supposedly to ensure competitive fairness. ZK's crest drooped slightly. They're trying to handicap my calculation speed. Correction. Marcus held up a finger, grinning like a predator who'd just spotted particularly stupid prey. They're trying to handicap the calculation speed they think you're using. Kid, remember what I told you about humans and warfare? That you're all certifiably insane and consider impossible situations to be more like polite suggestions. Close. The other thing. Zekin's compound eyes brightened. Oh. The best solution is usually the one your opponent never sees coming because they're too busy watching what they think is your advantage. Exactly. Marcus pulled out his datapad, fingers flying over the holographic interface. They think they've figured out how you're doing what you do. They think it's all about raw computational speed. But that's not it at all, is it? No, ZK agreed, his crest now rippling with excitement as he caught on. The calculations aren't the advantage, they're just the language I use to read the patterns. The real edge is in pattern recognition. They finished together. Pithra's biolights flickered questioningly. I don't understand. Marcus's grin widened. They can standardize processing speeds all they want, but they can't standardize how a mind perceives patterns. Our young friend here doesn't just calculate trajectories, he sees them, feels them, understands them on an intuitive level that goes beyond mere computation. The math isn't the tool. It's the translation of something far more fundamental. Like a musician who sees mathematics in sound, or an artist who understands the geometry of color, Pithra mused, her lights pulsing with understanding. Exactly. And speaking of patterns, Marcus showed them his datapad. I've been analyzing the remaining competitors. Want to see something interesting? The screen displayed a complex web of neural response patterns from the previous round. ZK studied it intently, his crest shifting through analytical colors. They're compensating, he said finally. Every single one of them has adjusted their neural patterns to account for what they think my capabilities are. They're so focused on matching what they believe is my computational speed that they've created predictable patterns of their own. Marcus finished smugly. Congratulations, kid. You've already won the next round, and it hasn't even started yet. Quarter-final round beginning in 5 minutes, the announcement system boomed. All competitors to their pods. As the technicians made their final adjustments, Gorval stalked past their station, his silver skin practically radiating contempt. Enjoy your last round, cripple, he spat. These new protocols will expose you for the fraud you are. Before Marcus could intervene, ZK responded in perfect, unaccented Arcanian. Your periodic neural oscillation pattern indicates a 47% probability that you actually believe that, and a 53% probability that you're experiencing what humans call terror-induced denial. He tilted his head. Would you like me to calculate the statistical significance of that distribution? Gorval fled. Why? Marcus wiped an imaginary tear from his eye. I'm so proud. They grow up so fast, don't they, Ambassador? Pithra's biolights pulsed with barely contained laughter. Commander, I do believe you've created a monster. Nah, Marcus patted Zekin's shoulder as the pod's canopy began to lower. Just helped one realize he was never really caged in the first place. The quarter-final round was nothing short of revolutionary. With the new standardized protocols in place, everyone expected ZK's performance to suffer. Instead, they witnessed something that would be talked about in neural link circles for decades to come. Where before he had merely avoided combat, now ZK turned evasion into an art form. His unit moved through the battlefield like a mathematician's dream given form, each motion setting up patterns within patterns. Competitors found themselves caught in geometric traps they couldn't even see forming, their own attacks turned against them with elegant precision. It's beautiful, one of the commentary AIs breathed, its circuits nearly overloading as it tried to analyze the patterns. He's turned the entire arena into a living equation. By the round's end, half the competitors had eliminated themselves trying to match patterns that existed only in their own predictions. ZK hadn't fired a single shot. He hadn't needed to. As his pod opened, he found Marcus slow clapping. "Not bad," the veteran said casually, as if they hadn't just witnessed the complete revolutionizing of neural-linked combat. "Though I noticed a slight irregularity in your third derivative during that last spiral." ZK's crest rippled with laughter. "No, you didn't." "No, I didn't. But I bet it made at least 3 competitors panic trying to figure out what I meant." Sure enough, several nearby pods contained aliens frantically reviewing their neural recordings. Thra glided up, her bio lights practically strobing with excitement. The semi-finals will begin in 30 minutes. The committee is already in emergency session, trying to decide if they need to implement even more standardized protocols. Marcus's grin turned predatory. Let them. They still haven't figured out that they're not fighting a computer, they're fighting an artist who just happens to paint with physics. ZK's crest rippled with determination as he watched the technicians prepare his pod for the next round. "Commander." "Yeah, kid." I think he paused, gathering his thoughts. "I think I'm ready to actually start fighting back." Marcus's laugh echoed through the arena, causing several competitors to flinch again. "Oh, this is going to be good." In the observation booth, the tournament directors watched with growing consternation as their attempts to level the playing field had only served to showcase an entirely new dimension of neural-linked combat. One that couldn't be standardized, couldn't be regulated, and couldn't be denied. The revolution wasn't just continuing, it was accelerating. And the best part, it was all perfectly within the rules. "They've changed the rules again," Thray announced, her bio lights pulsing with what could only be described as bureaucratic amusement. "For the final round, they're requiring all competitors to achieve a minimum number of offensive engagements." In other words, Marcus translated, checking ZK's neural interface calibrations, no more peaceful dancing through the battlefield. You'll have to actually shoot back this time. ZK's crest rippled with what the translator interpreted as gleeful anticipation, a color pattern that made several nearby technicians take involuntary steps backward. "Good," the young TR Kali said simply. Marcus paused in his adjustments. "Good? That's all you have to say? They're literally changing the rules to force you into direct combat with 4 of the most aggressive neural pilots in the galaxy, and your response is good." Commander ZK's compound eyes seemed to sparkle. "Did you really think I spent all those years calculating combat trajectories just to avoid them?" There was a moment of silence before Marcus threw his head back and roared with laughter. "Oh, those poor bastards. They have no idea what they've just done, do they?" "The finals will begin in 10 minutes, the announcement system declared. All competitors to their pods." Gorval, who had somehow survived to the finals despite his increasingly erratic attempts to counter ZK's patterns, stalked past their station one last time. "Ready to face real combat, cripple? No more running and hiding behind your mathematical tricks." ZK's response was to bring up a holographic display of combat statistics. Interesting fact, Champion Gurval, did you know that the Mark 7 simulator's targeting system has exactly 2,453 documented response patterns? Would you like to know how many of those I've calculated counter solutions for? What? All of them. ZK's crest rippled with colors that needed no translation. Every possible combination, permutation, and variation. I've had years to think about nothing else. Would you like to know how many of those solutions I've had to use so far in this tournament? Garval's silver skin had taken on a distinctly pale tinge. Zero ZK's compound eyes fixed on the Arcanian champion. "I haven't been running, Champion Garval. I've been warming up." As the Arcanian fled to his pod, Marcus wiped away another imaginary tear. "I think I'm going to burst with pride. Ambassador, tell me you recorded that." Thra's bio lights pulsed with satisfaction. "Every moment. It will make an excellent addition to my report on emerging patterns in cross-species psychological warfare." The final round began differently than any before it. Instead of immediately scattering into dogfight formations, all 4 of ZKT's opponents hung back, clearly uncertain how to approach this new requirement for offensive engagement. That hesitation lasted exactly 2.3 seconds. ZK's Mark 7 unit erupted into motion, but this time there was something different about its movements. Where before his maneuvers had been purely defensive, now each trajectory carried the weight of offensive intention. Each dodge set up not just an escape, but a counterattack. By all the stellar winds, the commentary AI gasped, he's turning the very equations of their attacks into his own offensive patterns. It was true. Every time an opponent fired, ZK's unit seemed to bend the energy streams themselves, redirecting them through impossible geometric patterns that somehow always ended up targeting their source. He wasn't just fighting back, he was turning the very physics of the battlefield into a weapon. "Do you see it?" Marcus asked Pithra, watching the neural feedback patterns with fierce pride. He's not calculating these patterns in real time. He's remembering them. Pithra finished, her bio lights pulsing with understanding. All those years watching tournaments, running simulations in his head, he wasn't just learning to avoid attacks. He was learning to turn them back on themselves. Marcus nodded. Every possible angle, every combination of energy patterns, he's turned the entire battlefield into one massive redirect equation. In the arena, Gaurav was the first to break. "This isn't possible," he screamed over the comm channel as another of his attacks somehow curved back on itself. "You're cheating. You have to be." Actually, ZK's voice was eerily calm as his unit executed a maneuver that looked like a Mobius strip made of pure energy. "I'm just applying standard geometric principles. Would you like me to explain the mathematical proofs while I demonstrate?" What followed was perhaps the most surreal moment in Neuralink Championship history, a disabled TR Kali child calmly lecturing on advanced physics while systematically dismantling 4 of the galaxy's top neural pilots. He turned their own attacks into art, into mathematics made manifest, into a dance of light and energy that left spectators breathless. When the final shot had been fired, or rather, redirected, ZK's unit hung alone in the center of the arena, somehow completely untouched despite having engaged in more offensive maneuvers than all other competitors combined. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single human began to clap. The sound was joined by another, then another, until the entire arena thundered with applause from every species capable of producing it. As ZK's pod opened, he found himself facing not just Marcus and Pithra, but a crowd of competitors, officials, and spectators. Even Gaurav stood there, his silver skin showing colors that indicated deep confusion and dawning respect. I don't understand," the former champion admitted. "All these years, you could have competed. You could have shown this mastery before. Why wait? Why let us mock you, dismiss you?" ZK's crest rippled thoughtfully. "Because until today, no one had ever given me the chance to prove what I could do." He turned to Marcus. "No one had ever looked at me and seen possibility instead of limitation." Marcus cleared his throat, clearly fighting emotion. "Kid, I didn't do anything except tell them to let you compete. Everything else, that was all you, always has been." No, ZK disagreed. "You did what every great teacher does. You showed me that the cage I thought I was in never had a door in the first place." His crest rippled with colors of deep meaning. "You showed me that sometimes the greatest battles aren't won with weapons or even equations, but with the simple act of believing in someone." Pithra's bio lights pulsed with diplomatic satisfaction. "I believe this would be an excellent moment to announce that the Galactic Neural Research Institute has expressed great interest in studying your unique approach to neural-linked combat. They're particularly interested in applications for rehabilitation and adaptive neural interfaces." "You mean," ZK's crest rippled with hope. "She means," Marcus grinned, "that you just changed the game in more ways than one. Your methods could help countless others learn to work with their own neural patterns, regardless of physical limitations." As the implications sank in, ZK's compound eyes seemed to shine with new purpose. "Commander." "Yeah, kid. I think I'm going to need more data pads. I have a lot more equations to write." Marcus laughed, the sound filled with pride and possibility. "Kid, I think you're going to need a whole lot more than data pads. You're going to need a classroom." In the days that followed, the story spread across the galaxy, the tale of a disabled TR Kali child who rewrote the rules of neural combat, and the human veteran who simply gave him the chance to try. It became a legend, a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the greatest limitations aren't the ones imposed by physics or biology, but by the assumptions we make about what's possible. And in a classroom on the Galactic Neural Research Institute's main campus, A young TR Kali professor with non-functioning locomotor appendages begins each session with the same words. Today, we're going to learn about patterns. Not just how to see them, but how to transform them. How to take what others might see as limitations and turn them into advantages. But first, let me tell you a story about a human who taught me that sometimes the most powerful equation of all is simply believing in yourself. In the end,